I'm Bruce. I'm the fittest fat kid you know, and I've struggled with my weight all of my life. And this podcast is an attempt to use my weight and my fitness journey to help you focus on yours. This week's a little bit of a departure as I go on location for the first time to record with a man I've spoken about on this podcast several times. So I'm very excited. So let's hit the music and let's get started. Eric, Chris, welcome to my show. How are you guys doing?
We're great.
Amazing.
Thank you for having us on your show, Bruce. We love you.
Why, thank you. The check is in the mail. I mean, I really appreciate you being willing to talk to me in a public forum and acknowledge our relationship finally.
Of course. Bruce is the best.
It has to come out sometime.
I know, exactly. Right. Always and forever.
Wherever you are.
I just need a moment now.
Exactly. No, Bruce has been a fixture at our place here in Hollywood, the ETT Mecca, and we love having him around. He works out really hard and tells the best jokes. And that combination we love.
Well, thank you for putting me on the spot to come up with a joke. So I don't have one for you. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Anyway, so throughout the course of the podcast, there's been a mention of Eric, the mythical Eric. That is the mythical Eric, and it's somebody whom I owe a great emotional debt to, shall I say, because you've been one of my biggest supporters. You've been one of my, I dare I say, greatest fans, but a source of inspiration, a source of support, a deep source of kindness, and of course, goofy shirts. And I'm not sure that I could have gotten as far on my journey without that relationship. Though I did put a lot of work in for myself. It wasn't all you, but your support made a lot of that possible. And I've always been very honest about that to you, but now I want to publicly acknowledge that to you, people at home.
We're in love!
I can't sing, but I might attempt when he does, and I apologize now.
Well, thank you, Bruce. Thank you for saying that. I can tell you that you are a very important member of our community, and we have witnessed your blood, sweat, and tears in this building for weeks and weeks and months, and people are motivated and inspired just watching you and watching your dedication to getting into great shape and your continuous humor in the process. And also the fact that you make a damn good apple cake. I mean, that goes a long way. I mean, not to say that trainers should be eating apple cake, but because of someone like Bruce, I've had to do a few extra push-ups and jogging around the block a few extra times because it's delicious. I think it came from his grandmother, who I bet was hot. And since his bar mitzvah, I've really liked this kid. What do you think, Chris?
You know, for me, it was a bread pudding.
Ah, bread pudding.
He lost me at bread pudding.
Bread pudding? But by the way, this is Chris Shelton. He's the other guest today. We didn't announce him. He's just kind of like sitting here sort of like, I'm here too. Hi. Anyway, Chris, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. And
I'm glad that I've contributed to your lack of fitness and need to sweat very much.
Well, you know, motivation, you know, it's a mutual thing, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, and Eric's right, you know, seeing you in the gym all the time working out, you know, and you said in the very beginning of the opening, is Eric's guidance and his continual support, but it's you showing up and making it happen. And that's the most important thing, because that's for any kind of issues that we may be going through in our life. That's the hardest thing is to be able to step into that and take ownership and show up and do the work and put in the work. And the transformation that you made while you're here was amazing. So, yeah. So thank you so much for having us.
Well, thank you. The one thing that this gym has been for me, and this is very, like, I view this gym as home, and I can work out very hard, but I can work out much harder here. And it feels like home. Like, there's nothing special about that lat pull down machine, but that is my lat pull down machine. I have feelings about that lat pull down machine. There is that red leg press out there that you've got to climb into, like the capsule of the Apollo 7. Right. Why is that designed that way? I don't know, but I love that leg press more than any other leg press in the world. Being here is an emotional attachment for me, and it's not only just a safe space, but it's a source, even when there's nobody else here, it's a source of support. And I think a lot of people are afraid to come to the gym when they get to a state that I've gotten to, because they're afraid they're going to be judged. You're going to walk in and they're going to be like, these buff people are going to look at you and be like, ugh, ugh. And that's not the way it is. What would you say to somebody who's having these thoughts?
I would say you're right. I would say, well, first off, the leg press talks about you when you're not around. I'll walk by the leg press and it'll whisper, "He laid on me again. I was going to say something, but I was much too shy. I was also eating at the time, and I didn't want to show my teeth." But besides that, we designed this gym specifically to be a place of openness and friendliness, and a place where people would come in and take ownership. I wanted this gym to be the kind of place that you would come in and say, "This is my gym." Like, you feel like this is your place. It was designed that way. And specifically, even to go one step further, this gym was designed with artists in mind. And for those that don't know Bruce is an artist. He's a comedian. He's a filmmaker. He's a wonderful guy, hyper creative. I would put you in the hyper creative space. And
I just put me in the hyperspace.
No, I put you into the hyper creative space. And I've really, as an audience member, I've enjoyed the work that you've done. Including that short film, which was genius, that you should show a clip of right now. Hit the clip.
The thing is, and I say this with modesty, there's more than one that I could put here.
That's true. I'm specifically thinking of a lunchtime break and a battle.
Lunchtime is over?
Yes, and a battle to the death that was funny and exciting and awesome. That's just one of the many things that you've done. But it thrills me that you feel like this is your place, because that was our intention. I worked for 5 years in Manhattan before I came to Los Angeles. And while working in Manhattan, although I had a lot of financial success, I started to see how gyms were actually run, and I didn't like what I saw. So I made this list, kind of like in a Dr. Seuss fashion. If I ran the zoo, I said, wow, if I ever have my own gym, I will do this. And if I ever have my own gym, I will do this. So what you see here is the product of all of those things that I would have done differently, and it obviously is working.
Well, I liked the fact that you refer to it as a zoo.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we do seem like exhibits. But I got here through stunts, which is a funny thing. And there's this window. And on the one side where there's this boxing ring, we had this stunt class. And the area was not really set up that you could really do stunts that well in there. But then there was this glass, and it was sold to us like, there are these people, they work out there, and they're like the fabulous and the fit. And I was always on the other side of the glass going like, yo, I could be on that side too. And then so one day I just simply walked in.
Exactly, walked through the glass. It was
walked through the glass. I just melded.
It was a life-shattering moment.
I had thought I'd phased, but apparently I just broke through like the Kool-Aid Man. Oh yeah.
So he walked into the gym. I grabbed him by the neck and reared back to punch his face, and he said, "I make apple cake," and I kissed him on the lips. We've been friends ever since.
Yeah. Oh, good. We're still recording.
Okay.
What is happening here? This is the first time I've done this kind of setup. Those of you who see this on YouTube will see this.
Yeah,
so
you're on location for the first time.
I am on location. I'm almost like a real reporter, except I don't do any studying and I don't know what I'm talking about.
Right.
So in this ecosystem that you're describing, the ETT Mecca, we have people like you that are working out, trying to make themselves look and feel their best. And that's really important to us. As a trainer, my job is to be a cheerleader, and I've been a big cheerleader of yours only because I actually am a huge fan of yours, and I love watching your process as you go through these times. And then also, someone like Chris Shelton is a huge source of inspiration both to me and the members here, and he literally will fix you when you get hurt. So as you're going on this mission and you're working out and you're doing things, the one day that you do the extra rep where you get the tweak, which would normally put you out of the gym for a while, Chris Shelton has the ability through his magical Qigong sense to fix you. And to me, it's right up there with David Copperfield. It's incredible. I've been lucky enough to have him in my life where I've hurt myself and he makes me better. So having Chris here it gives me almost an insurance policy that artists like you, Bruce, and other artists that are important to us can work out at the very capacity of what they can do, knowing that if they veer off and hurt themselves, we have a pit crew right here that's ready to spring into action and save the day.
awesome. I've got this shoulder thing. My shoulder just wants to hit me. I don't know why.
That's okay. I can hit it back. That's what I do. That's how I fix it. No, yeah, and those kinds of issues that people have, which prevents them from coming to the gym, chronic pain or inflammation like that, we actually fix very easily. And people will laugh at me sometimes when I say, "Oh, a back issue, that's easy to fix. A shoulder issue, frozen shoulder, it's really simple to fix." And they say, "What?" Because maybe doctors or other practitioners have said, well, we can't. There's nothing we can do about it. Surgery, or we give you medication, and in some cases, we'll see where they'll be recommended like antidepressants because they'll say, well, the pain's in your head, so we can't find anything with the MRI, so the pain must be in your head. Here's an antidepressant. So from my world of practicing medicine, we really look at not only what the pain is, but then we go deeper. What is the emotional pain behind the shoulder pain? What is the emotional pain behind the lower back and sciatic nerve pain? So we look at that as well too.
Much like Eric, all that emotional pain comes from being raised Jewish.
Oy vey!
Yeah, it's just the amazing amount of guilt just simply from being born. You know what I'm talking about because we all get hit with that. But I have been dying to talk to you because the purpose of this podcast, not only just to be my own mental, emotional dump to try to process the fact that after having reached that level of success that I hit here, and it felt like everything was on track.
Right.
And then the pandemic hit.
Right.
And then that home situation that I don't want to go into detail because it is a bit private and there's other people involved.
Of course.
And then the allergies.
Right.
And I was for 9 months, and you can actually see a little hint of, I don't know if this will turn up on camera, but it's like a little hint of a hive, a little bit. Well, this was almost like elephantitis all over my body for 9 months. And that's what happened to me. And that's where my resolve went. Because for a lot of the pandemic, I probably gained 10, 15 pounds. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not great. Definitely not great. But that still it was within human level of normal fluctuation and weight gain, especially under the circumstances of the pandemic.
Right.
So that was the 15 pounds of the 78. So then there was another 65 that happened because I was all broken out, incredibly frustrated and depressed. And it just wrecked everything I did. And I didn't, when that's happening to you, there's no way you're working out. You can't move.
Right.
So that's how I got to this state and needing to start over again. So kind of not quite square one, more like square three.
Okay.
I did discover last week, because I had been fasting, that I can do a 3-hour workout and be absolutely fine the next day while, in the middle of a 7-day fast.
Whoa, that's intense.
Yeah, but that's all. And also to be clear to everybody else, that's me. That is completely me, and nobody should be attempting that. There has to be genetic things going on with me, as well as the fact that I am very familiar with fasting. So if you're thinking, hey, I'm going to do this, you're not. Don't. But it's not me, it's somebody else. They've gained a lot of weight. They are depressed. They don't have the will. They don't know how to develop the will to start again.
Right.
You are a master trainer. How do you start this person? And they can't, because in reality, they can't come here. They can't come here, but how can you help this person start back up? What would you tell them to do? What are things? Where's your wisdom on this?
I would say to the person that finds themselves depressed and without motivation, looking to change their lives, that we really need to examine the very science of change from a fitness standpoint, and that is 3 things: exercise, diet, and sleep. So if we can align those 3 things even slightly in the right way, it's kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark, when he goes into the room and he puts the stick in the ground and he puts the medallion on top and the sun comes down and you can see exactly where it is. When you align exercise, diet, and sleep, magic happens. So from an exercise standpoint, I would say to that person, let's go on a walk today. I mean, the first step is literally a first step. And when you walk and you move your body, that's actual manual circulation. There's blood in your body and there are muscles, but they don't really have the level of circulation you would expect when you see it on the charts in school. You actually have to force it to happen. So when you go for a walk, you actually force the blood through the muscles. There's the expansion and contraction of all the different muscles. There's the cardiovascular system that's stimulated. I say, if you want to change your life today, let's do 3 things. Let's go for a walk, preferably about 20 minutes. And as you walk, you'll know that you're walking the right way because you could hold a conversation. Walking does not have to be fast. Now, I didn't say stroll. We're not looking to go dun 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 and drag one foot behind you as you drool down the side of your shirt. But on the other hand, you should be able to have a conversation. So I say, let's go for a walk. Let's choose healthier foods. Protein sources that are clean, like chicken, fish, beef, eggs. Water-based carbohydrates, fresh fruits and vegetables, delicious, hopefully in season. And then, of course, healthy fats. Olive oil, avocado, things like that. Some raw nuts. If you want to meet real raw nuts, this is my friend Chris Shelton.
Yeah.
Hi.
He is a raw nut.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, I've been shelled.
So exercise, diet, and then sleep. You know, it's really hard to go to bed early when you're feeling bummed out. But I would say that if you're able to wake up and go for that brisk walk and eat healthier foods, your body will be naturally more tired than you're used to. And so when you feel those feelings of sleepiness late in the day, give in to them. Don't have caffeine. As a matter of fact, if you really want to give in to them, stop eating all food around 7 o'clock at night, because then around 9:30 or 10, your body, being a machine without fuel, will start to slow down, and we want to drift into a nice place of sleep. Exercise, diet, and sleep is the science of change. And for more, here's my friend Chris Shelton.
Da da da. Yeah. So, and those are the primary things to do, and then also, like what you were talking about too, is how's our mental emotional state? What is, when we have skin lesions or rashes or hives that show up, there's something going on internally. And as a practitioner for over 21 years, I've served thousands of patients from around the world, and we could see somebody who is physically fit, who is exercising and sleeping right and such, but yet maybe they're not processing their old angers and resentments, and then all of a sudden they're developing a condition like carotid artery disease, or they're developing a condition like hives, or which sometimes will be diagnosed nowadays as lupus or Lyme disease. And so so we have to look at, okay, how's our mental emotional state? How can we balance the internal aspect with the external? And this is what makes mine and Eric's relationship so great, because we have a great synergy, because Eric has a amazing way to transform people and make them look beautiful from the outside. My job then is to help make you look beautiful from the inside. And so some of the practices that I like to teach to people, or that we teach for the public, we have government contracts. We're clinical directors for the Special Olympics, and that is a practice called Qigong. And Qigong is the foundation of Tai Chi. It's also the foundation of acupuncture. And they're very simple movements and in specific guided meditations, but all meant to do something medicinally inside the body. But more importantly, most people don't realize that anger, resentment, hatred, old anger attacks your liver and your gallbladder. And it creates all kinds of diseases, from neurological diseases to skin diseases. Depression, for example, when we see patients come in with depression, I don't treat this. What happens is I treat the blood of the liver, which affects the heart, which then affects the mind. So it's a different way. Most people don't realize that, grief and sorrow, loss and disappointment, shame and guilt weaken our lungs. And so if our lungs are weak, guess what? We may develop an unproductive dry cough. Or what may happen is that we may notice that our blood has become weak, because our lungs are one of the organs responsible for building blood. So there's these different emotions. So we don't just call it stress. There is stress, but there's specific kinds of stress. And these specific kinds of stress actually attack different organs and then show up as disease, shows up as addiction. It shows up as so many things. Shows up as unwanted weight gain. It shows up as so many different things. So we address it in the clinical setting from looking at, what's going on the inside.
With the hive thing, my hives I know definitely have a physiological basis, because turns out I'm really allergic to dairy. And when I do eat dairy, this is where it kind of starts from. And since I do things like keto, one of the things I talk about, and I feel is true, is diet is individual. There are things you have to framing this again, take 2. Diet is individual, and things that might work for me may not work for you, or specifically won't exactly work for you the same way it works for me. So doing keto worked really well for me. Keto with intermittent fasting and other fasting. So that, to make life bearable, because otherwise you're just eating meat and that can get a little bit depressing, is I had a big intake of dairy. It wasn't a problem for me till the end of last year. After all of that family stress, there seemed to be like a 3-month gap, and then the hives hit. And I'm wondering, because I've gone through this at various points of my life, oftentimes at a real stressful moment. After that family situation had resolved in a couple months later, it still I hadn't come down on it, but then the hives hit and things got really exacerbated. So it makes me wonder if that it just was a delayed react. On top of the dairy, I'm being actually allergic to dairy. If it was a delayed reaction to that, it may still be going on because I still am to some degree processing that.
Yeah, so, the reality is that your DNA wants to be healthy. There's a book written by Deepak Chopra and a famous brain surgeon, and it's called The Super Gene, and they talk about how they've proven scientifically that even if you are susceptible to certain things, that most of that helix, that DNA strand, is healthy. There's only certain parts. And so what they proved is scientifically is that, if you change the environment, change the diet according to your constitution and such, then you don't have to get that disease. And so what we see over and over again in clinic is that when we have these different kinds of stresses, then what happens is that, once if that stress goes away or if it continues to compound, because your body's like a cup, everybody has this cup. Everybody's constitution is different. Like you said, what kind of foods can you tolerate? How much stress can somebody tolerate? Do they have a proper methodology for which to release that stress? And then if not, your body says, okay, well, guess what? I have to show you somehow. Because it's not, grant you, the food here in the U.S.,
terrible. The standard American diet is custom designed to basically inflate you like a balloon. Especially the use of the high fructose corn syrup, because fructose, your body, every cell in your body can burn glucose. Aside from your liver can convert fructose, but otherwise your cells can't utilize it. And if your body is already full of glucose, the only thing it does with that fructose is convert it to fat. So, and we have a lot of fructose in the standard American diet. I keep saying that because it is one of the most frightening parts of all of this.
By the way, this show is brought to you by the Fructose Association.
Yes. This is brought to you by Doritos.
Exactly. We're everywhere thanks to you.
Please subscribe. We'll give you an ear of corn.
Yes.
Exactly. Ow. I loved it when you said all diets are different, because it's really true. Like, meow, meow, meow eats meow, fish meow.
I do not know why that I am able to thrive so well on the keto diet, because I don't think people, even people who have it and have success with it,
right,
I don't think they can do the things that I do here,
right,
on that diet.
Because you do marathon workouts here sometimes, which are really cool. Yeah. Like the 3-hour one you did.
Oh yeah, but I mean,
amazing.
it's not. I don't even know why it's. I'm not exactly sure why I like doing that sort of thing. I think it might be the fact that I was a very sedentary kid, and I don't know. I never told you this story, but
no, tell us.
When I was 11 years old, and I weighed 200.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
11 years old.
And I was on my way up to 280 pounds. I had gone to a summer camp, and somebody came in who taught Krav Maga, and it was a lot of fun. And even as a pacifistic, wimpy, picked-on kid, I really wanted to do martial arts. So my mom took me to do Krav Maga, and I was really excited. I couldn't wait, and they took me there. And these bastards took a look at me and decided, you know what would be great for him? Jumping jacks. Nothing but jumping jacks. I did hundreds upon hundreds of jumping jacks. I would finish what they tell me, and they tell me to do more. I was crippled for months.
Shoot.
That killed any desire I ever had to do Krav Maga. Even to this day, as much as like if it's a martial arts, if it's something, it's screamo sticks, it doesn't matter what it is, I just want to do it.
Right.
I just want to go and play, and I don't care if I suck at it, I don't care how long it's going to take, I want to do it. which is why I'm chasing Scott around trying to punch him in his face. Another running bit for the show. But I will not do Krav Maga because that experience at 11 years old, and it's not the fault of the greater Krav Maga world. It was some douchebag trainer who didn't have compassion or humanity.
Was it an older trainer or younger?
Through my 11-year-old eyes, he was an older person. So, because that's how, as a 11-year-old, you view the world, as there are kids, adults, bigger adults, and then grandparenty people.
Right.
So I would put him somewhere in adults and greater adults. I would guess around 30s to like mid 30s to mid 40s.
Let's find him now and kill him.
I would love to.
Shave his head.
Yeah, I was going to say, by now he's like in his
We
70s.
might not even be able to shave his head. At this point, it very much could be that he has no hair. And maybe no head. Who knows?
Let's find him and make him do jumping jacks here. That'd be fun.
But yeah, that was horrible because not that life should have been different. You can't wish for your life to be different because that's a waste of emotional energy. But had he been different, my fitness journey as a child and where I am as an adult would have been completely different. Now,
Sure.
In all fairness, I wouldn't wish for that because there's been a hell of a lot of good in where I am at as an adult, and any change along the path would not put me here. So, the good with the bad if we're being realistic about it. But still, you don't do that to an 11-year-old.
What city was this in?
Philly.
Let's go right now.
Yeah.
Southwest, we need you as a sponsor.
Or,
Hey,
very
right next to the
specifically,
Burbank Airport.
I need anybody as a sponsor. If you want to sponsor me, I want your money. I want your support. Through your money.
So here's a question. If you had the opportunity to go back to your 11-year-old self, and right after the incident where you were forced to do those jumping jacks, you could get down on one knee, because I'm sure you're much taller now. And good.
Actually, no. I was 5'8" at 11.
Really?
Yes.
All right. So if you could stand up on a stool, and
I could look. I could. We'd be the same height.
Okay, cool.
We'd just be eye to eye, which is.
What advice would you give that 11-year-old boy, that awesome kid, pre-bar mitzvah?
That never actually had one.
That's what I mean. I'm talking about you right now, pre-bar mitzvah.
Pre-bar mitzvah. Still pre-bar mitzvah.
Up next, the bar mitzvah episode you've been waiting for, a very special Bruce.
I think what I would say to the 11-year-old that I was, that everything that they've said to you in the neighborhood, that you are fat, you are ugly, you are worthless, you are not one of them, because I was in a neighborhood where I was not the standard religion that was in that neighborhood. And I bore the brunt of a lot of bullying and a lot of being picked on by adults.
No way.
Adults who would tell their kids how much handsomer they are compared to me, how much nicer, how these nice Irish Catholic boys versus the dirty Jew that I am.
No way.
Yes. I had a mother call my house and say things like Hitler was right.
No.
Which, by the way, then my mother called her. And you don't want my mother calling you. Especially now she's passed on, and that would be a very really scary thing. But, so if you get a call from her, run. But I think I would say to him, what I would say to me is, the people that you live around are very small, horrible people, and what they say and doesn't matter. That you are much smarter and much more capable than you realize. That once these legs heal, find something fun and physical to do. And don't be afraid. I was afraid for so much of my life. I am not where I could be by my intellect and personality. I'm not anywhere near where I could be. Because I spent a large part of my life afraid to do anything, to try anything. That's why I just simply dive in these days. Because I spent a long time afraid to try anything because I might fail. I might screw up. I might get laughed at. I might prove that I was worthless. So, do what you want to do. Try. I didn't have a girlfriend until I was in my 20s because I was afraid I couldn't talk to girls. And then it took me years after I finally managed to be able to talk to them one-on-one to finally get to the point where I could just simply talk to people. I mean, you do not know that I am an incredibly shy person.
No.
That's because I learned how not to be. That was how I ended up wanting to take acting classes in the first place, was I need to be able to, if I don't want to die alone, or if I lost my girlfriend at the time, be able to get another one, I have to learn how to deal with people and talk to people. So I took an acting class, and it didn't work for a couple semesters until I finally was in this one play that was so embarrassing that it was sort of like, well, that was the most embarrassing thing that could ever happen to me. Everything else is cake.
Whoa, what play was that? That's
Zoo Story by Edward Albee.
Okay, that's a great play.
It is. I was Jerry. Jerry says a lot of things. And I said all of those things to an audience of 400 people for 2 weekends plus 2 Sunday matinees. So that took a very big edge off the shyness. Now, that doesn't mean it's gone. That just means I have coping mechanisms for it. Because ultimately, it's still there in one form or another, and it manifests itself in strange ways here and there. Of course, I manifest lots of things in strange ways. It's sort of my bag, doing strange things and just having little weird personality things. So, but I was cripplingly shy.
Wow.
And Liz doesn't believe it.
No, it's hard. It's hard to believe only because there's a mantra that follows you around, at least here, and I'm sure Chris has witnessed this too, where when you are mentioned or when you leave the room, we always hear this phrase, I love that guy. Right. Like I was telling some of my clients today, hey, I'm going to do Bruce's podcast. Bruce, which Bruce? And I told them it was you. And they're, oh, I love that guy. It's like, of course, that's the mantra that follows this guy around. So that doesn't seem like a shy guy. That seems like the life of the party. But that's amazing to hear this story.
But it's while being a very sincere, it's a very, very learned behavior. It's like, I'm funny. And I am, but it's because natively I have a kind of dry, wry sense of humor. But I've learned how to be funny. I've learned how to present things. And it's not that I'm emotionally like plotting and planning these things. I don't. Most of my life was me learning how to get out of my head so that I could just be in the moment, not just from like an acting standpoint. There was an actor. Don't be in your head. If you are an actor, you must be in the moment. But I was the kind of person who thought deeply about everything. And you can still see it come up how sometimes I will weirdly get into details about things that nobody cares about, but I will sit there and talk to them about it and sort of like, Bruce. That's because that's how I natively think. I had to train myself to just be able to be like, hey, here I am. But I can always look back on it and explain to you, this was funny because I did this and then this, and then the expectation was I would do this, but I said this instead. I didn't think about that beforehand. It just so happens I can look back on it and understand the full thing. But again, learned behavior, because if I lost my girlfriend, I'm going to be alone. It took me 21 years to get the first one. I didn't have the opportunity to even really kiss a girl until I was in my 20s because I was so cripplingly shy. And that's because this 11-year-old kid, now I had issues to one degree or another throughout all of my life. And my mother, whom was a very, very wonderful and supportive woman, she also was a very, very paranoid woman. And so anytime as a kid I did something a little strange, or I had an issue, or I was like, if something happened, she'd immediately go to a bunch of child psychologists, and then they would drug the shit out of me.
No.
Yes. The part of the reason I am the weight I am is because I was put on medication that did two things. It was supposed to keep me in reality because I would talk about aliens and spaceships. I was a kid who liked Star Wars. I knew I was talking about fantasy. But she was afraid because I talked about it a lot, because I was also being a bit obsessive is part of my nature. She took me to psychologists. They told her I was slipping from reality, and they put me on a medicine. I think it was Thorazine, because Thorazine affects children different than it affects adults, but it could have been anything, because I don't know. I was 5. It took my metabolism, crushed it, while quadrupling my appetite. The exact balance you would want for your child.
That's unbelievable, because she uses the word obsessed. In our society, you're actually rewarded when you're focused. Like, it sounds like you were an amazing kid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what can I say? I am that kid. There was extraordinary things about me, but then there were also issues that went along with it, and she didn't know how to deal with it. And then with the loss of my father, things got exacerbated. And of course, we were around these very petty, anti-Semitic people whom used me as a whipping boy.
We should have gone to Philadelphia and kicked their ass.
Just for fun.
Because we're older than you. Yeah. So we could have been your bodyguards.
That would have been nice.
That would have been awesome.
That would have been so nice. But that's, I think, getting back to the original question, that you are stronger than about everybody who is picking on you and bullying you. You are more capable than you realize. You are in a world where everyone wants to view themselves as unique. You are unique, very much so. And you are able to do so many things. You just have to do them. And don't be afraid if you fail. It's one of the things I love telling people is, if you're afraid to fail, don't be. Failing is one of the best things you can do. Your successes are not built on your successes. They're built on the mistakes and the failures and the scraped knees and banging your head. Yeah, screw up. Don't be afraid of that, because I was scared to death of that up until the time I wasn't.
And you're going to end up with a hot girlfriend who I know.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's one of the things why. Would you change anything? It's sort of like, well, if I change something, there's no Liz.
I know. And she's pretty awesome.
Oh, God.
I know.
She gets embarrassed because she's also kind of very shy, private person. And that's what makes the relationship great, because she doesn't like to talk to people. Even when today we had her work gave her a gift card to the Cheesecake Factory. So we went this afternoon. Uh-huh. Like, maybe we should call to see if there was a wait. She's like, okay, I'm going to call on your phone so you can talk to them.
That is hilarious.
So, but there's not a thing there's not a thing in the world I would want, even if it would have made various parts of my life in the past easier, because if any of that happened, I would have ended up somewhere else. There would have been no meeting Liz. And maybe I would have met somebody nice. Maybe I would have met someone more like the other girls that I've been involved with. But it's not her. And while I don't believe in the idea of a soulmate, there is not just one person for you. There are a lot of people who would qualify as your the one soulmate, because there's just too many people in the world. And there are a lot of people, whether you can find them or not, who are perfect for you to some degree or another.
I love it.
I know, look at them.
I've been waiting for you. I've been waiting for an Eric like you to come into my life.
Ooh. I want to cry. But yeah, I would not want one thing that would risk changing having met her. And it is great that despite the fact I did everything in the world to possibly not be serious, that everything worked out with her. But yeah, she is the best person I've ever met. No offense.
Exactly. Damn, the dresses didn't work.
Damn it.
You promised me drag would work.
All right, I'm out of here.
Exactly.
Anyway, so after 25 minutes, does that answer your question?
It does.
Any more?
Imagine if the 11-year-old Bruce was on his way to the Krav Maga class and knowing that he was going to have to do these ridiculous jumping jacks by these out-of-touch moronic instructors, which, by the way, is a familiar story. Chris and I have both been to the Martial Arts Super Show in Vegas, which is the largest gathering of martial artists, specifically martial arts school owners in the world. And you hear a lot of stories from martial artists that the way they got into martial arts was through negative experiences. And that's how they ended up becoming martial arts instructors and owning schools. Let's say you were holding the hand of the 11-year-old Bruce and he was told to do jumping jacks.
I mean, if I was there when they did that?
Yeah. What would you say to the instructor? As you right now.
As me right now?
Knowing everything you know.
No, knowing everything I know, well, what I would say is sort of like, well, what the first thing I would do is I would say, you're not doing that. And I would say, what I would say to him, I was like, can I pull you aside? I want you to take a look at that child. What makes you think that he can physically take that kind of stress on his body at this moment? He is not here to do that. He came here to learn how to punch and kick and to get into shape that way. I'm going to take him out of here because you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Because if you want him to do hundreds of jumping jacks, that shows that you're incompetent at your job.
Yeah, that's
beautiful.
That's awesome.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I wish you had been there, dude.
I wish I had been there.
Right. And by the way, I consider that to be a very polite response.
Yeah. It's
I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you what happened with me. As you know, I have a son.
Yeah.
And that son had a desire to study martial arts. And so when he was probably around 8, 9, 10 years old, I brought him to a martial arts school that was highly recommended. It was not Mr. Chat, because Mr. Chat is actually where he got his black belt. And Mr. Chat is a phenomenal kids martial arts instructor. But I took him to this original school, and it seemed like a good school with kids and instructors that were responsible. So I dropped him off. And by the third session, he came home and said, I never want to go back to martial arts again. And he was crying. I said, what happened? I couldn't believe it. I was so shocked because I've been doing martial arts since I was 10. I'm now 52. So I've been doing martial arts for 42 years. Chris is a martial artist. We actually met, interestingly enough, through martial arts because he was working with a UFC fighter named Kung Lee. I was training Kung Lee for a movie because he's also a movie actor. And so we were introduced through Kung Lee, which I'm forever grateful for because this guy's awesome. But getting back to Henry, so I said, what happened? And he explained to me that not only had he been asked by the instructor to kick a pad, and when he went to kick the pad, the instructor had pulled the pad away and Henry had kicked and fallen on his back. But also, later during the same class, the instructor was demonstrating a move and ended up kicking Henry in the stomach and hurting him, and so Henry had to sit down. And so I was not as mature as Bruce. The Bruce that was holding the hand of the 11-year-old Bruce was polite, articulate, and walked away from a fight. As a dad in a martial arts, I went down to the martial arts school and I said, hi, I'm Henry's dad, and I'd like you to do to me what you did to Henry so that I can give you a more appropriate response. He ran into the bathroom and locked it and wouldn't come out until I had left. So I just want to say, man, you're a lot more mature than I am.
I'm only because I know the other side that would happen for me, so I have to. I'm from Philly, and even though in Philly I'm considered a retiring, quiet, polite individual, I still have that Philly vibe, and the default state is, you talking to me? Like, you got a problem? What? All right, come on, like
Philly's known for its fighters, dude.
Yes.
Even Rocky's from Philadelphia.
We proudly had a police precinct and a jail and a judge in our football stadium.
Whoa.
That's Philly. That's Philly for you. And it's innate in my family. It's one of the flaws of my family. Both my mother and my brother did not fulfill even close to their potential. Chris, it's potential.
Oh, potential. That was the word you were
That was
seeking.
That was the word you were going for.
I thought you were talking Pig Latin earlier.
I was.
Update, ubite.
But my brother couldn't get past his anger and his thing, so when I get into really tense situations, this is water, so I can talk. When I get into these really tense situations, I really do want to go in like just screaming and arms flailing and all that, but I can't because it gets you nowhere and it provides nothing. And also, I mean, I don't look nearly as intimidating as you do. So
no, but you're from Philly. You have the Force. You're a Jedi Knight.
Yeah, I have that air, and it surprises people sometimes when it comes out because I come off as just like this friendly, warm, like soft-hearted guy. And then something happens, and suddenly I'm in my Philly mode, and people are sort of like, "What happened?" But yeah, so it's a deliberate choice, just because I've watched my family just do so many stupid, dumb, damaging things to themselves because they were indulging in their anger more than they should. So even if in my heart I just want to be like, yeah, I gotta, if I could just like get my hands under his jaw and rip his face open, I can.
Now there's Philadelphia.
That's where they got that idea from Beetlejuice. Remember, there's like,
yeah, totally.
That's exactly where I was going. You can just stick your hand in and kind of get right down the throat and pull the heart out. That's here. That's what's going on. That's what's going on here, and that has to be like. And let's think about what the end result of that will be. That is so unproductive. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to be, you're incompetent, you're a moron, you shouldn't be teaching kids, we're leaving now. That's a deliberate choice.
Totally.
But yeah, I definitely would have prevented the 11-year-old me. And I wouldn't have stood for it. I'm not sure what my mother did, because my mother was very protective of me. I was a very sheltered child. I don't know, because I couldn't walk. I think she went there. I do think she actually went there and screamed at him.
Oh, awesome. That's good.
I think she went there because I couldn't go to school. I literally couldn't walk for a month. My legs were so burning sore. The only other time I've experienced anything like that, I had been walking along the top of a wall, trying to balance, because we did weird stuff back in my Valley CrossFit days. And he had us fight to stay on, so I was fighting to stay on, and you'd fall off to the left or you'd fall off to the right. And I've got short legs. Like, if my legs were normal people legs, I'd be like 6 foot, but I'm not. I crotched myself onto a concrete wall. It hit right there. It's the closest I ever came to breaking my leg, but I didn't. However, the muscles and the skin there was really, really thickened, and I couldn't walk for a couple weeks. Eventually, I could walk, and it was painful. I will say this. When I did fall off the wall and hurt myself, I immediately got back on that wall and finished the walk before going home, just because I knew if I didn't do it, I would then forever be afraid to be up on that wall.
Whoa, that's cool.
That's good.
Yeah, so, but that was the closest I ever came, but that was like 2 weeks. That wasn't like 6.
Right.
So yes, that's that story of the scars in Bruce's life.
So Chris, from an emotional standpoint, the physicality that Bruce grapples with at times, whether it's weight gain or breaking out in hives, are those things that he could deal with and get through using Qigong?
Yes, because Qigong is one of those practices. It's thousands of years old. It's not a belief structure. What I tell people is that anything that's been around for that many years, if it was fake, it would do itself in. But yeah, because it's such a simple practice that anybody could do. And a little background story on me, I grew up a little rough upbringing and such, and my parents were the opposite, neglectful, abusive, and those kinds of things. And so
so sorry.
So anyways, I put my addiction for myself was I started doing drugs at a young age, and then after a heart attack at age 18, I put myself into Taekwondo. That was the pain. Normally, it takes pain in order for us to change, right? For most of us, that's what pain does. It says, "Oh, okay, let's wake up a little bit." And so, anyways, I had all kinds of health problems. I had digestive problems. I couldn't eat a healthy fat. If I ate an avocado, or coconut oil or anything like that, I was vomiting an hour or two later. A salad, I was in a fetal position. A pork chop, it had fat on it. I was, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I was sick. I had chronic sinus issues, and I lived on all kinds of medications, went through all kinds of tests, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. Well, after I started doing Taekwondo, or started training Taekwondo, I started competing right away, and then was severely injured in the back one night before a match, and which led me to a physician who had a therapist working for her, and he was a martial artist, and this is over 30 years ago. He said, start talking about Chi. I'm like, yeah, right. Closest thing I'm gonna get to Chi is like Cheez-Its and Cheez Whiz. That's about as close to Chi as I could understand. So anyways, I started taking these classes and these gentle movements, and I kid you not, about 6 months into it, it's like, when did that go away? When did that stop? And so I thought, man, if a gentle movement and specific meditation could do this for me, then that's when I started. There must be something to the medicine, so I started going to school for Chinese medicine. But in hindsight, because the leading cause of death and disease is negative emotions and trauma. And when it's not released properly, because emotions are good, like they are a barometer as to what's going on in our environment. So, like, anger is a good thing. If anger causes you to create positive change in the world, to fight for the underdog, to get out of a bad situation, that's what that anger is good for. But if the anger is causing you to drink too much, my dad is overweight, and he grew up in an abusive home in Panama, also trauma from the Vietnam War, so he used food as his mechanism. So if that old anger and resentment is causing you to, kick the dog, abuse one thing or another, then that anger is no longer serving you. So we've seen it over and over again where people can actually start practicing these ancient practices, these very simplistic practices, and they will transcend the trauma. Because I've been through therapy too. After I got off the drugs, I became suicidal, and so my mom took me in to see a psychiatrist, and automatically that's what they do is they put you on meds, right?
Oh yeah.
And so what happened was that sometimes I go to these appointments, and it's like they picked off the scab, but the wound was still there, right? The wound was still there.
Right.
The difference with Qigong is that, yeah, we want you to revisit certain things while you're doing, let's say, a practice to help to harmonize the heart or the lungs or the liver, whatever. Focus on the situation, but by doing these practices, what it does is it creates the vibration or the emotional suffering underneath that. So it's not just picking off the scab, it's now healing the emotional suffering. And through this pandemic, thanks to you with the Sleep Ninja, you started off at the beginning of the pandemic here. Then we had the 7-day Chi Challenge, and we didn't realize it because everybody's in lockdown. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of unknown. But after things started to pick up again, we started this Chi Club. Thanks to you, and we didn't realize the impact that it had on people around the world, your audience. And we started getting letters and emails and donation checks from people from around the world, thanking us for how much this emotionally was able to help them through this time of fear and uncertainty and such. And so long-winded answer to your question, but yes, I believe that Qigong in combination with proper sleep, proper exercise, proper diet according to your constitution is essential to be able to work through this stuff, because we say that there's a yin and yang aspect to trauma. The yin aspect is the trauma itself, the pain, right? The yang aspect, though, is the wisdom learned from the circumstance. And so we want to get rid of the pain part, but keep the wisdom that was gained. And that's what Qigong allows for people to do. And so on a deeper level, what it's doing is that it's helping to harmonize your physical and your mental, emotional, but not only give you the tools for past trauma, but also day-to-day trauma that comes up. Because, especially in this time and space of everything that's going on in the world right now, it's an accumulation. Your nervous system could only handle so much, and eventually it has to show up somehow. And the common word right now in Western medicine is inflammatory diseases. Inflammatory diseases. And, back when we were kids, you could have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and not have anybody freak out next to you.
Right.
Nowadays, right? So true, the food is not being processed properly, but also too, what also is creating the environment internally for the food not to be absorbed properly, right? So we would look at, okay, well, what has gone on in the person's life, right? What have they done in order to be able to work through this? And so, this is one of those things I can't talk enough about that really empowers. It's self-empowerment. Like you were saying, what would you do as that 11-year-old? This is the same thing. It's self-empowerment, something you could take with you anywhere. You don't need a special yoga. You don't need a yoga mat. You don't need special yoga clothing or anything. You could do it from a seated position. You could do it from a standing position, and you could do it anywhere. And as something comes up for you, or if you start to focus on, or something starts to bubble up from the past, then you're able to utilize these practices in order to deal with what's going on. And I mean, and it's helping thousands of people. We have a contract with HHS, and we gave a presentation here recently to the Department of Psychiatry as other tools in which to now give their patients in order to help with trauma and pain. Because, like I said, I had that drug background. Well, what causes addiction? Pain. You hide from the pain by using something, whether it's sex, food, drugs, alcohol, whatever, gambling. It's a crutch to cover up what is going on the inside.
Yes, food is definitely,
Right.
for me, it's food.
But the interesting thing also is, for all of the experience that I've had as a personal trainer, I've studied with the greatest fitness minds of all time. Chris is the one that taught me the physical and emotional connection, which was never taught to me by any of the fitness experts that I ever worked with. One day I was working out probably a year or two ago, and I was concerned about my son at the time. He was going through a breakup with a girlfriend, and having nothing to do with that, my shoulder for some reason was hurting me. And I was working out, and Chris came in the gym. I said, "Oh, thank God you're here, man. My shoulder's feeling kind of funny. I don't know what it is. Can you check it out?" And he felt it, and he said to me, "You're concerned about your son." It was manifesting itself as shoulder pain. Just so you know, that's outside of my realm of understanding, which is why I love this man. But it really sort of points to the fact that the physical and emotional are connected. So the things that you felt when you were that 11-year-old boy have a profound effect upon your physicality, not only then, but also now.
No.
And that's why I thought it'd be really exciting, when you asked me to be on your podcast, which, by the way, is a huge honor because I love Bruce. He's so cool. I thought, man, it'd be really neat to come on with Chris so that your listeners and your viewers could get a full sense of what they would need to feel better. I represent the physical primarily, and this guy has that connection between the physical and the emotional. So some of the aches and pains you have are traumas from the past that you can go through, and as those traumas are dealt with in your mind, they leave your body. It's like magic. It's incredible.
The question I have for you right now, Chris, is... Chris. Just like saying...
Exactly.
Chris.
The new fragrance by Ralph Lauren.
Chris. By Estee Lauder.
Exactly. Smells like sea. I love the ocean.
Smells like the lack of pain. Do you have a tip that somebody can practically use in the moment? For whatever reason, this person is either in the process of beginning to relive a trauma or beginning to grind on something. What suggestion, what bit of advice, what tip do you have to this person before they sort of begin going down that rabbit hole and begin creating a little bit of a generator of negativity? Because that's kind of how it starts. For example, right now, I have a friend who is a dear friend of mine, and he's become an anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist.
No way.
It's the same thing that's going on all over the country. And every time I talk to him, and this is somebody who is one of my closest friends, whenever I talk to him, just weird crap comes out that eventually so afterwards, it'll randomly just come into my head, and then I will spend, no matter what I want to do, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, Eric's sneezing length of time, the rest of the day, just going on and on and on. Like, now I don't want to do this.
Right.
It definitely puts a dark spot into the day.
Right.
But it also doesn't stop.
Okay.
So that was just an example of one thing like that. What can somebody in that state do to either short circuit that, circumvent it, prevent it, or...
Yeah, break the loop.
Break the loop.
Break the cycle.
Break the loop.
So one of my favorite...
Because it is a feedback loop.
Yes, because one of my favorite practices is called the dry cry. Because most people don't realize that your heart is the emperor of the body. It dictates how much of an emotion is going to be expressed or suppressed. So when we talk about consciousness, people, scientists for years have been trying to find, well, where's our consciousness at? It's not here. It's here. What people don't realize is that the heart will take the brunt. So for example, if you're grieving a loss or disappointed, your heart hurts, and then it weakens your lungs. If you're angry at something, what happens? Your heart races, then it weakens your liver and your gallbladder. If you're worried or pensive, thinking about something all the time, your heart races, and then weakens your spleen. If you're fearful or something, or in flight mode, what happens? Your heart races, and then weakens your kidneys and your bladder. So the favorite practice that I like to give is called the dry cry, because there's actually the negative emotion that affects the heart is all the emotions, but overexcitation and mania is probably one of the biggest ones. Also abandonment and loneliness and lack of joy. But most people don't realize, but you could actually have a heart attack from laughing too excessively. And if you think
that is how I want to go.
that'd be a great way to go. But the reality is that all of us have experiences. If you are laughing hysterically at something, what is the first thing most of us do? We all go, right?
Yeah.
Because the heart is trying to regain balance. If you're grieving the loss of a loved one, a friendship, a dog has ran away, or a pet has to be put down, you'll hear the person sigh a lot. Or they'll yawn a lot. Why? Because the heart is trying to regain balance. So the healing sound for the heart is ha, like laughing. And so what I recommend that people do is that if you're in public, obviously you're not going to be doing this out loud. You do it underneath your breath, but you inhale, imagine a pink cloud filling up into the heart. What is the circumstance? And then as you exhale, imagine that circumstance leaving like a dark cloud. And you do that over and over again until the feeling starts to subside. Now, if you're at home or in your car or something like that, then I recommend doing it audibly. And when you do it audibly, I would recommend that you lift the chin and imagine the circumstance leaving from your throat. So you would inhale, exhale. Imagine that person, that circumstance leaving like a dark cloud. Over and over again, then you would inhale again. And it has to be that specific sound, H-A-A-A. And it seems like it's a goofy practice, but I'm telling you right now, it's the one thing that will help you. Number one, first and foremost, instead of you suppressing, which creates inflammation and disease.
And indigestion.
And right.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Especially the way I eat.
Yeah, and indigestion. What it'll do is it'll release the vibration or release the circumstance as it comes up. So this is probably one of the most powerful practices. And, I'll give you an example. So when I first met Maria Shriver, she had me perform at the Special Olympics World Games in 2015. And one of the things, and so before the World Games, I performed at the U.S. Games at Long Beach. Anyways, a gentleman by the name of Brett Lauza got up on stage. He was one of the torchbearers who was supposed to carry the torch from Athens, Greece to the LA Coliseum. Along the way, he was supposed to stop in major cities and give a speech. Anyways, Brett got up on stage. He saw the 3,000 people in the audience. He froze. He walked off the stage. Now, here's his dilemma. I ran into him and his mom later on. And he said, Chris, he goes, I'm supposed to stop and give you these talks. I froze once. What if I freeze again? So I gave him the heart healing sound, the ha sound I just demonstrated, and the heart Qigong movement. And what happened was that the torch came through Los Gatos, California, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area. So my wife and I went to go see, and the police escorted him in, and the mayor gave an opening speech, and Brett got up on stage, gave an amazing speech. And then afterwards, him and his mom found us in the audience, and he said, I just want to thank you for giving me both of those practices, because now I'm speaking in front of over 20,000 people without a problem.
That's awesome.
It's not magic. It's not magic. The heart, we have a saying, the heart houses the mind, which houses the Shen, or your spirit. So the heart houses the mind. So if the heart is obstructed, guess what? The mind will be obstructed. And one of the ways that we could diagnose if somebody's mind is obstructed is by looking at a person's eyes. If somebody's eyes are foggy, there's no glisten to the eyes, we know that there's something going on psychologically with them. And if you may have run across somebody on the streets or whatever that is going through some extreme hardships and mentally, emotionally, psychologically are in a bad place, you look at them, their eyes have a dull, lustreless eyes. That's not by accident. It's because the heart's been obstructed.
Instinctually, I'm sure you've noticed before. Like, I think instinctually, even if you walk into a place like this and you see someone like Scott or someone else that you know and they have glazed over eyes, you see, what's wrong?
Right.
Yeah, this guy knows the signs of that.
Yeah, so this is something you take with you anywhere. And there's different sounds for different emotions. But the heart, like I said, it It really, it really says it all. And several years ago, my wife and I, a priest and I, we were at the Shrine Auditorium here in LA, and we saw it was Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle speaking, and they had two chairs side by side, and they had a little table, and there was a rose in a vase, and Deepak Chopra told the sold out audience, he says, "Okay, everybody study the rose in the vase." He says, "Everybody see the rose?" And everybody nodded yes. So he says, "Close your eyes. Can everybody still see the rose?" Everybody nodded yes, right? Because they just studied it, right? He said, "Open your eyes." He said, "Nowhere inside your brain is there a rose." So what does this mean? It means that your brain is a reflection of your reality. Your true consciousness is here. So when we want to get to past trauma, accumulating day-to-day trauma, that this is where we start, is the heart.
Thank you.
And I'll tell you who has a big heart. Bruce! Bruce!
God, there's so much I wish I could have helped. I wish my family could have gotten some degree of help with. It actually, if I were to admit publicly, and I'm not going to do this, but if I were to admit publicly, my biggest fear is to live a life that is similar to my mother and my brother. And again, I've not loved anybody aside from my dogs. And as much as I love my mother, I am purely a mama's boy. Not the hang at the apron strings kind of mama's boy, but very much she was the source of comfort. But she had a sad life after my father passed away. She never regained it. She never was able to get past the trauma of that. And as much as you think I have a personality, I am the person in my family who doesn't have a personality. My brother, my mother were spectacular in what they could do. Me, I have to work at it. But they couldn't get out of their own heads. My brother literally was offered a breakfast restaurant. He wanted to be a chef. And he lived his life as a short order cook at Perkins. Which is sort of like just a half hair step above IHOP.
Whoa.
And considered himself the chef at Perkins, but of course he didn't make he was a line cook. A friend of his who owned a very successful business wanted to put him in a restaurant and actually found a place 2 blocks away from where my brother lived and offered it to him. And my brother found the way to say no. He didn't say no. He simply didn't really respond to the guy. And then later on he was like, yeah, well, he had this idea and this idea. So I didn't want to do that. I was like, he offered you have been talking about your place. He was willing to rent it for you, supply it, be in business with you. And my brother found a way to say no because of the noise in his head and just whatever his setup was. And of course, now he's passed away. My mother never ever found another companionship, never did anything because she couldn't get past her depression. And it would have been nice for them to have been able to work on these things. And now what they serve is just an example of the life I don't want to live, as much as I love and respect them. And they're kind of the things in the back of my head that I think of from time to time versus where I'm at versus where I want to be.
So,
go ahead.
So this is a fine example. So what I would do then, let's say if you came in for a session, I would say, okay, I would want you to go ahead and focus on certain circumstances around your mother. Good times, the losing of her, for example, feel these times, feel who's involved, what was involved, what was the environment like, were there any special smells, were you outside, inside, feel it like it's just down there. Then that's when you do this ha sound, for example. Because then what happens is then it starts to break the vibration that's stuck inside the tissues of the body. And so this is how this practice works. It really, and it's so effective for that kind of stuff because, we have this kind of pain, but we're not supposed to relive it over and over and over again. Like this is not what the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. I don't think that that's what it had in store for humans. The pain is meant for us to grow and for us to develop. And then what we do is what you're doing right now is then you share your pain and how you got through it with somebody else. You don't take it to the grave with you, That's true healing. That's a true journey. So part of this pain is doing like your podcast here is bringing it back, giving it back to people. This is what I've done. I've met great people like Eric, who's helped me transform my life. Maybe now you introduce this Qigong practice, but then from there you share your experience, because we all have pain. Everybody has different levels of pain. And there's nobody that can sit there and say, well, his pain is worse than that person's, whatever. It's relative. It's completely relative, And so this is something. And the other thing that I'd recommend doing too is that, and this is a hard one, maybe a hard one for some people to swallow, but some of the hardships in my life, I've had to look at myself in the mirror. And I do mirror talk also. This is another practice. And this is not necessarily a Qigong practice. But it's
you got to be your own hype man.
Yeah, but it's
who the man? I'm the man. I'm not really the man. No, you're the man. I am not the man. You are the man.
But I would say something more along the lines is like, I have acceptance over all situations. So having acceptance is not a form of weakness. It's actually a form of strength. And acceptance doesn't mean that you love less or care less. It's that you understand the situation for what it is, right? So it's coming up with powerful sayings, but looking at yourself, because like you said earlier, so many of us are in our heads, right? We're up here, right? Playing this loop. But if you pause it and look, and you're driving and you say no, and you look in your rearview mirror and say, no, I choose to create that I have acceptance over all situations. Or if I have non-attachments over all situations, then guess what starts to happen? Your cells can hear this. Your cells are listening to what we're saying to each other. Our cells are listening to what we're saying internally. Your cells respond to that kind of rhetoric, just like it responds to the negative rhetoric that we speak.
I think also Chris is sort of hinting at the notion of, by releasing the baggage from the past, you can actually be in the present and really be there for yourself and for others, and you can create a new narrative for yourself. And also, one of the things I've noticed, especially with guys like you who are so creative, is you're struck by inspiration. You have this idea to do something, and then you have this drive to get it finished. And then when it's done, you share it with others, and it inspires others. I mean, a lot of guys would love to do what you have done, and that is create these short films that are really fun and brilliant and exciting, and you watch it and you want to watch it again afterwards. That's how you know it's good. You watch it and you're like, that was awesome. I want to watch it again right now. Like, that's really good. Like, you've done that. And so already when we hear about your past and when we hear about your family who, essentially never reached their potential, you're already breaking those boundaries by creating art that stands on its own and inspires and motivates people. So I think Chris is right. I think that if you and your listeners to this show can find ways of using physicality and the spirituality and the release of Qigong to free themselves of baggage from the past, it allows you to be more fluid so you can live a great future. But the other thing that I notice, and this is what I really want to tell you, is my observation is the definition of success is different for each person. So as a trainer that lives in Hollywood, I sit at that desk behind you, and I have young trainers. Which
is amazing considering the amount of stuff that's back there.
I know.
Right? You can even sit there.
It's crazy. And I have young trainers that come in from all over the world, all over the country, and they sit on this couch and they say to me, I want to be successful, man. Do you have any advice? And so I always stop them and I say, tell me what success means to you. And none of them say the same thing. It's really something else. Success isn't like a red Chevy Corolla. Actually, it's Toyota Corolla.
It's definitely not a red Chevy Corolla.
It was a crossbreed.
It kind of reminds me of the time I was sitting next to an NFL legend on a football. I was sitting next to an NFL legend on an airplane, and I was so excited to be sitting next to this unbelievably amazing and famous NFL player, and we were making small talk. And I felt like I needed to ask him a question about football because the guy is like world famous for all the plays he's done, and he's in the Hall of Fame. And I said, let me just ask you a question. If you catch the ball and they tackle you on the 52-yard line, and he said, let me stop you there. There is no 52-yard line in front. And that was about it. It was kind of like saying, if you're playing basketball and you shoot and make a touchdown, and it's like, wrong game, you know nothing.
So you take your football bat,
exactly, yeah,
and you hit the shuttlecock over the net.
It was one of those moments. But getting back to what we're talking about, the definition of success is different for different people. And so one of the ways that you can empower yourself, empower others, is to actually ask yourself and others the question, like, what is success? And even write it down. Don't just say it to yourself, but write it down. Because, for a guy like you, success is Chris and I grab our beautiful women that we have in our lives. We go to the movies, the lights go down, and there on the screen is Bruce, funny as hell, doing what he does best, entertaining people, making them smile, doing original, great stuff that's insightful but funny, and touching the lives of millions. I mean, to me, that's what success would be for you. When I think about a movie that I saw years ago as a child, like Private Benjamin. Did you ever see the movie Private Benjamin?
Man, you're pulling right out of the past, but dude. Goldie Hawn at her Goldie Hawnest.
Yeah, she enters the military and she doesn't really know what she's getting into, and the next thing you know, she's in this crazy situation, and it's actually really funny. Dude, if they remade Private Benjamin, I would like to see you in that role. It would be so good.
I think I could pull off some of Goldie Hawn's costumes.
It'd be really
we do have the similar cheekbones.
Well,
But I know what you're saying. I mean,
Shalom Han.
Yeah. Plus, I get Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell.
And on that note, viewers, we've gone deeper into my psyche than we meant to.
Exactly.
We have herbs for that too, by the way.
Next episode will take place on location at Pride.
It's funny because with the film stuff, I both feel like I've succeeded and I've gotten nowhere close at the exact same time.
Yeah. So what comes up for me is that I think the great thing about a human is that we could reinvent ourselves. We're the only species that really could reinvent ourselves at any point in time if we put our mindset to it. So I think if you change, it's the rhetoric surrounding, because everything's energy. If you don't believe in energy, like energy inside your body is your blood. Like if you are deficient in blood, you have no energy, right? Right.
There's aspects to what people call energy. There's forward momentum, because there's some people talk about it in a spiritual sense, but you can remove the entire spiritual aspect to it, and there is the kind of vibe you give off.
Right.
So you'll meet people who, even as incredibly capable as they are, their vibe is on a negative side. So even whether you believe in energy or not, like you don't want to deal with that person, right, or there's something about them that's off-putting.
Right. So what we're saying. So like, for example, if I want to have a change in my life, for example, years ago I was angry and controlling. In hindsight, it was because of my dysfunctional childhood, right? Mm-hmm. So I couldn't say, man, I'm just this angry and controlling person. Or people say, Chris, you're angry. I'm like, screw you, you're angry, right?
Your face is angry.
So to change
you should see my tushy.
But you're sitting on it.
Especially after fried food, then it gets really angry.
Wanted to talk all day.
He wanted to crack a joke.
It's not smiling.
That joke is lost in the thing because there's no separating of these microphones under this circumstance.
But so if we change, if I change it to say, what is the opposite of controlling, right? What is the opposite of different in the positive sense? So this is what I would say. Well, I can't sit there and say I choose to create that I'm not controlling and angry no more. Now, what is the opposite of being angry and controlling? Well, for me, it's being more loving and compassionate. So I say, I'm a loving, I am, not I will be, because it puts it off into the future. I am a loving and compassionate person. And you start to change that rhetoric, and then what happens is that there's a response. There's a response now because the vibration that you're giving out responds to everybody else around you, mm-hmm. right? And even separating from the spiritual stuff, so that response that comes about just from saying, well, I'm different. I would say I'm gifted. I am gifted. When you say that kind of stuff to yourself, then what happens is then it vibrates. If you look at me, most people, because when people say, oh, you have to go see my Chinese medicine doctor, they don't expect to see someone like me, right? Like I don't fit the mold, right? If there is a mold or a stereotype, like I don't fit the mold. I love martial arts. There's so many things I love. I'm not fit. I don't fit. I love to dance. I love art. I love all kinds of things. So I don't fit this mold. But if you were to look at me, you may say, oh, well, he's just some kind of, I don't know, tough guy, he has a big ego or something like that. Who knows what the persona that or what people may say, but what I'm
you got
trying
an
to
Italian bruiser vibe, it's like,
yeah. So see, yeah. So if you saw me walking,
what's the matter with me? What's the matter with you?
right? So if you're walking down the street, right? If you and I didn't know each other, who knows?
We're gonna rumble.
Yeah, who knows what you would pick up from me. So because I recognize that the way that I look sometimes could be a trigger for somebody, I say hi to people. I smile and say hi because it changes the vibration just like that, right? So it goes back to changing the vibration and the energy output that we're putting out. And like I said, even if you're driving your car and a negative thought comes up into your head about yourself, like, man, I can't seem to find the right agent, they're not giving me the right parts, I'm much more talented than this. You say, no, I have found it. And I am talented and I am amazing. Right? That kind of stuff, then now guess what? You've changed the trajectory of where you're going. And one of my favorite philosophers on character building and financial freedom was Jim Rohn, who passed away several years ago. And Jim Rohn years ago was talking about, he went to see Neil Armstrong talk about his flight to the moon. And he said that Neil said, flying to the moon is really as simple as figuring out how you're going to get there and then how you're going to get back. Now, I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that, right? Mm-hmm. But Neil said, this is according to Jim Rohn, Neil said, but on the way to the moon, unforeseen things happen. Gravitational pull, solar winds, whatever, which would throw them off course. So sometimes they would have to make minor adjustments or major adjustments. And he said this is an analogy for life, because along the way, we sometimes also have to make those minor adjustments and major adjustments, right? He says, because if you don't make those adjustments going to the moon and you miss the moon, you never come back.
That sucks.
You never come back. So the idea here is that everybody has this, everybody is giving, and the other thing that Jim Rohn says that I love that he says too is the same wind blows on us all. It's just the direction of the sail. So for me, the direction of the sail is by what we're saying and what we're putting out there. Because that changes everything. I was a butcher for 21 years. I went from being a butcher and a meat manager, single father of 2 kids, to healing people. Like, how did this happen, right? And I had so many naysayers. Some of my instructors, my own family members said, you'll never make it. You never make it. And for me, and it almost did destroy me. It almost did beat me down, right? It almost did beat me down. But I took a chance. And then I kept on taking chances and scary chances. And then, that's how I met this great guy, like ending up here, I could never have fathomed in a million years. When you invited me on tour, the short part of the tour of Def Leppard and Journey.
Yeah.
Like, and treating the band. Like, I remember during sound check one time.
He didn't stop believing.
I remember during sound check one time, we were listening to sound check, and something you said to me was very profound. And you said, because of things that you have done have led you to this point in time right now, to be able to enjoy something so cool and so amazing, right? And that's always stuck with me. Yeah. So it's an accumulation sometimes, and those small it's like what Jim Rohn said. Sometimes we just have to make slight little adjustments to get to the moon.
I mean, this guy was a butcher. My last name is Fleishman, which means butcher in German. We're long lost brothers. But yeah, I mean, Chris is totally right. Small things in life, those small decisions you make sometimes have profound effects upon the grander picture. I mean, I grew up on a farm in Maine in the middle of nowhere with no pretty girls and no palm trees. My parents aren't rich or famous. I was wondering when I was about 12 years old how I was ever going to get out of there. I mean, there was no path to greatness and to artistry and to a better life. And I remember that there was a moment of truth. I think I was 12 and a half or 13 years old, where I was sitting in my room. I looked out the window. It was a dark night. It was snowing, but it was pitch black. And I thought to myself, how the hell am I going to get out of here? Like, that was kind of a profound, heavy thing. I remember feeling it in my chest, so maybe my heart hurt. And at that very moment, I had seen The Karate Kid, a movie I really liked. I was listening to Def Leppard's CD, which I thought was really cool.
I'm guessing Pyromania.
Pyromania, because Hysteria had not come out yet. And flash forward years later, I trained the guys from Cobra Kai. I tour with Def Leppard. These people are not only in my life actively, but they're my friends and colleagues, and we're all still working together and helping each other in a positive way. So in a weird way, nothing has changed, and yet everything has changed. That's the way life is. But, there has to be that desire, that spark within you to reach for something that's greater than yourself in order to achieve it. And so I would say to that person that's sitting on the couch who's feeling out of shape and hopeless, that it literally takes an actual step just to begin the process. It's here, and then the mind and the heart command the body. So if you feel helpless, all you need to do is stand up, look around your circumstances, go for a walk. The very moment you start exercising, even a walk, endorphins, which are chemicals in your mind, are released, which begin to make you feel pretty good. And then if you look at the contact information on this podcast, you can reach out to Bruce directly, and maybe you need a few words of wisdom from the man himself. Sometimes it takes that. I can tell you that a couple of the guys that work for me here full time, who have worked for me for years, reached out in blind emails or phone calls to me saying, hey, I want to work with you. And I said, great, let's do this. So sometimes it just takes a phone call or an email to change your life, but you have to reach out.
And I want to be clear about this. I am very receptive to somebody who needs to reach out. That's why I put my email address, which is hithere@fittestfatkid.com. I do want to hear from you. If you have nobody else to talk to, I am not just saying this at the end because it makes a nice little soundbite, even though it does, so I will do it again at the end of this. But I am serious. If you are sitting there and you feel a little hopeless and you don't have anyone to talk to, I will respond. I am there for you. I am not just doing this because it's a vanity project, which it is, but that is not the point of all this. There were times in my life where I was alone and I had no one to talk to. And I remember how that feels. I am here and I am doing this because I want you to be better. I want you to feel better. I want you not to feel hopeless because I've felt hopeless and I know how that feels. So if you do not have someone to talk to, you do. It is me, and you may email me, and I will respond. And if you don't know how to start, I will help you. I don't have all the answers, but I will help you frame the question. And I do have people to ask, as you can see. Anyway. By the way, you were wondering, you're like, how long do you record for? So for the answer is 1 hour and 36 minutes.
That's insane.
These things can go.
But thanks, man. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Again, I can't stress how important. As I've said, I know you catch various episodes of this in God knows what order, but you're a fairly reoccurring topic on this podcast because you're one of the greater positive experiences or influences onto how I do, which was part of the reason when things were so bad, I just couldn't face you. It broke my heart to tell you everything you saw, everything I did. It's all gone. It's gone, or it's all gone. I look like I did before. I actually didn't, but the idea of walking in here, because you were like, yeah, you know what? Come in tomorrow. What are you doing tomorrow? You're not doing anything tomorrow. You come in tomorrow. It's like, well, I can't say no.
Right.
I can't refuse. I have to come here. This is my greatest fear.
Well, the good news is that you're dealing with a person who not only is a fan of yours personally, which has nothing to do with your physicality, but I love the process. Mm-hmm. And so if you have stumbled and fallen a little bit backwards, then that just means more process for me. So on a very selfish level, it means Bruce will be around a little bit more. I like it. I'm not into just the results. I actually love going from normal to extraordinary with you. And so whether that takes 2 weeks, 2 years, or 2 months, it doesn't matter. I'm into the process.
Yeah, and coming, as I said before, coming in here does not only is it that, okay, we once had a conversation where I asked you, Eric, how many people that working out in this gym, how many people would be able to do what they do without you? And you were like, to be honest, it was like, the answer is probably about 10% of them. It's like, part of what I really do is I provide a point of focus. I get people focused and, they sort of drift off. And I thought like, well, I was past that point, but I wasn't. I can't thank you enough for just the person that you are and the kind of effect that you have, just not on me, but on just about everybody here. What you are is you're a nexus of positivity. And you help people provide this degree of focus and commitment that they are, and that includes me, sometimes incapable of without that driving support. And in a lot of ways, you do make extraordinary things possible, even when you're not directly at that moment actively involved in doing it. Just the environment you provide, the energy you give off, because that's like another thing about you. You are relentlessly driving me like a pile driver of positivity. Whether you want to be positive or not, there's not really that much of a choice when you enter this place. And I really appreciate that about you.
Thank you so much. Well, the one thing you should know about me and about Chris also, I don't want to speak for Chris, but we're in the service industry. So when we show up at the gym or when Chris is in clinic, like, we're here to ask you 7 words. What can I do for you today? Mm-hmm. So we're like a great hairstylist, an amazing waiter. We are here to serve, and it's our pleasure to help others, to empower others to be the best version of themselves. Yes. So, you can look at the world of fitness and trainers and health professionals, and you can almost divide them down the center. There are half of the people are saying, look at me, be like me, drink the drink that I drink, wear the clothing I wear, be like moi. And they're very much about themselves, and they have followers, and it's really nice that they're great examples. And then there's us, and we want you to be on the pedestal. We want to use our skill set to make you better. Even if you're a rock star or a movie star or a celebrity chef already, what can we do to make you even that much better? That's what Chris and I try to do. And it's our life mission. It's a mission much bigger than ourselves. It was started by men. In Chris's case, it was started by men in China hundreds of thousands of years ago. In my case, it was started by some guy named Jack LaLanne, whose book comes out next month about his life. And it's a thrill to be part of that legacy. So we're happy to help.
Great. Well, on that note, let's start going into the wind-up, because otherwise we're going to have to get dinner then come back. Both of you, then you, which is Eric, Chris, do you have any final thoughts, final tips, final statements to the people who might be listening in?
Yes. There is hope, and there is light in the world, and there are people that care about you, and they want you to be part of their lives. And so remember that you're important. And even if you're feeling sad, all it takes is one phone call. All it takes is one email. All it takes is one nice walk outside. Like, if you're feeling closed in both internally and physically, get outside. Take a nice walk in your neighborhood. And if you don't live in a nice neighborhood that's suitable for walking, drive to a place where it's safe to walk and spend some time out in the sunshine. Get that vitamin D to come into your body, and realize that there's a place for you in the world. And ask yourself a question. If someone gave you $100 million tax-free and you had no financial issues or worries for the rest of your life, what would you do? What would you want to do? If you can answer that question, that should probably be your job, because it sounds like that's your passion. And if you can follow your passion and your passion becomes your job, you don't feel like you're working. You feel like you're doing what you're meant to be doing. And that's one of the most wonderful things about living here in California. I wake up every day and I come to this location, but I'm doing what I really want to do. Like, I feel like I'm on a mission, and it's important and it's special, and I'm honored to work with people. So if you can make your passion your work, you'll never work in your life.
Chris.
Wow, beautiful. Yeah.
Really.
And Yeah, so going on the coattails of what Eric was just saying is that yes, I believe somebody said to I was in a class a long time ago or a few years ago, and the doctor there he said something that was pretty profound. He said before we come into this life form we sign a contract with heaven that we are to find our life purpose, because that's how when you find your life purpose, that's how the universe or God, whatever you want to call it, is able to express itself fully through you. And life purpose could be anything. And after that, I ran into our car got a flat tire, and I ran. The tow truck driver was this young kid, about 23, 24 years old. Just got out of the Marines. He had a GI Bill, and this kid loved being a tow truck driver. Loved it. And like he said, I have a GI Bill. I can go back to college anytime I want to, but I really feel like I'm helping people by being a tow truck driver. So my dream has always been to own my own truck, and he owns his own truck. So it doesn't. You could whatever feels good for you, and that's the key. What feels good for you? Align yourself with what feels good for you, because when you speak from your truth, from not from somebody else's truth, then you're able to more easily tackle or acquire what it is that you need to do in order to step into the truest version of yourself. And like what Eric said, we're here because I wake up every day grateful that I get to do what I do. We serve thousands of people around the world, not just patients in clinic, but in classes online and such. And I'm grateful that I get to be of service because it's such a gift. If I can empower somebody to change their mindset to like what Eric said, to be able to take that first step, then I've succeeded in what I'm supposed to do. That one step allows them to get out of pain, whether it's physical pain or it's emotional pain. If that one step from something I said or something I've demonstrated allows for that to happen, then this I've accomplished what my purpose is. And I think that it's good every day when you get up in the morning, before you get out of bed, to just say 5 things that you're grateful for. Even if the world seems to be falling apart around you, list 5 things. And it can be the same thing every day. Because if you wake up with an attitude of gratitude in the morning, you will change the rest of your day. If you wake up like, oh, my life is horrible, I got this and that to do or whatever, then the day is going to come about that way, as you're speaking. So 5 to 10 things that you're grateful for. And if you're not certain as to what your purpose is, start writing it out. And it could be the most wildest thing. Maybe you want to be an astronaut. And you think, oh, no, that's impossible. I can't be an astronaut. No, really, the sky's really the limit. If you put it out there, the possibility now has been started. It's like the pebble in the pond. You now drop the pebble in the pond and the ripples go out. And as those ripples go out, you never know who you're going to pull into your circle to allow you to achieve that very thing that you want to achieve. And the last thing before I give it back over to you is even if you don't believe it right now, look at yourself in the mirror and say, I love myself and I believe in myself. And even if you don't believe it right now, the more that you say that to yourself, eventually what happens is that you're like, wow. Because then loving people start to come into your life to support what you're saying to yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Normally, this is the time in the broadcast where I say, Eric, Chris, where can people find you when they're not finding you here? The problem with saying that right now is you're always here, Eric. So, metaphorically speaking, where can people find you when they're not finding you on my podcast?
They can find me online. I'm on social media, so they can reach out to me anytime they want.
What is your social media?
At Eric the Trainer.
And links will be in the show notes and on the description on YouTube.
Like when he calls me a lynx.
Yeah.
Lynx.
He's a lynx and a minx. Chris, where can people find you?
So they can find me at all my social media handles are all Chris Shelton Qigong, and you spell Qigong Qigong. So all the social media handles or the website is sheltonqigong.com, and up there will be all the social media links and handles there.
And again, those will also be in the show notes so that people can just simply find it.
Great.
And as for me, I am the fittest fat kid you know, and you are finding me once again in your ear canals. But on the socials, I am at the fittest fat kid. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, at fittest fat kid. And as I said before, but I will say it again as promised, if you've got a question, if you want to talk to somebody, if you need some advice on your fitness, send it to me at hithere@fittestfatkid.com. I know for a fact that by the time this goes out that my website will not be there because I haven't even started that, but again, I will just keep talking about it, and that website will eventually be sometime in the distant future. www.fittestfatkid.com. So, no matter who you are, no matter where you are or what you're doing, hold yourself accountable, but do it with kindness and understanding. And I'll talk to you next week.